All right, folks, I think we're going to get started. I think we worked out a plan here for our webinar this afternoon. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us. We know that this is our next in our series of webinars that are aimed at, kind of building capacity and getting information out there to Community Early Childhood Council. So we really appreciate all of you that's taken time to join us. We've got some absolutely great material and great presenters for you today, and I'm going to let you know who those folks are. If you have any issues through the webinar, Patty Singleton, our technical support, is online. Feel free to use the chat function to kind of let Patty know what's going on if you can't see or hear something you think you should be able to see and hear. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get going. I have the honor of having two great presenters today, and it's Bradley Stevenson and John Parker, and they're going to talk to you about some fundraising. But before we do that, let me let you know a little bit about Brad and John. Bradley is the Executive Director of Child Care Council of Kentucky, located here in Lexington. Bradley is a graduate of University of Kentucky and has been in the field of child care resource and referral for about the past 15 years. The Child Care Council currently manages child care assistance programs for the state of Kentucky and also manages child care aware contracts for 3 of the ad regions in Kentucky. A graduate of Asbury College and the University and the Kentucky College of Social Work, John Parker, our other presenter, has worked on community change in Central Kentucky since 1988. He started his career helping those struggling with addiction, mental illness, and chronic medical conditions. In helping with those issues, they were able to find solutions to improve their lives. For the past 15 years, John has focused on creating innovative programs addressing the problems that keep communities from being their very best. Some of his most successful programs include early childhood development, quality capacity building efforts, asset building initiatives for families, and out-of-school time academic enrichment. Originally from Detroit, John has been a Kentuckian since 1986. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to these two gentlemen. As always, if you have questions, please feel free to share it in the chat. We'll be cataloging those, and we'll always have a little question and answer afterwards. So with that, I'll turn it over to John and Brad.
Thanks, Joe. This is John, Vice President Community Investments at United Way of the Bluegrass. I want to thank you for tuning in today to this, my first webinar. So bear with me as I get used to the format. But I wanted to thank you for taking the time, because I know that all of you have a vision for early childhood development programs in your communities and commit significant amounts of time to furthering that. And the topic for today is something that I live with every day in my work, and as my boss likes to put it, a vision without resources is a hallucination. So I know the struggle that you all have at the very local level to bring resources forward that actually allow you to do the work, the great work that you do. I've been working in resource development for the last 15 years. I was with, before working at United Way, I was with Community Action Council in Lexington for 13 years prior to that, working on grant writing. That's actually where I learned how to do a lot of grant writing, and many of you on this call today are affiliated with Head Start programs, so shout out to you all. So hopefully I can bring some of my practical experience that I've learned over those years. I've never had a formal training program. I've never taken a formal training program on grant writing. It's just something that I've learned across, the opportunities that I've had at work. And so over the course of time, I find that I spend more and more time writing grants. In fact, often they don't let me out of the office to do much else. But it's something I really like to do, and if you can kind of get used to it, it can be a little less intimidating the more exposure you have to it. Many of you have this experience already. So I'm eager to share with you the experiences that I've had. If we could have the next slide, please. I wanted to talk just a little bit about your United Ways, your local United Ways. We have United Way organizations across the entire state, and I would say for the majority of them, United Ways nationally are focusing on education, financial stability for families, and health. And so if they're not already, they're a good partner to sit down and meet with and see if there is some points of collaboration that you may be able to discover, because United Ways are more and more interested in getting involved in the issues. This chart here just kind of gives you an overview of the transition that United Ways have been going through the last, say, about 5 years. Traditionally, United Way focused primarily on workplace campaigns, raising resources to fund worthy agencies who are doing great work in your community, mostly focusing on basic and essential services, crisis services. As we've started to transition and started to take a look at the changing look of the donor, we know that as we talk with donors and grantors, they're becoming more interested in being an investor. That means they have a real vested interest in knowing what their money is being used for. They like to make sure that it moves into something very specific, and they're looking for a specific outcome, and they want to be a partner in the work, not just the donor. So this chart outlines that to where your community impact United Way over on the right side, the right column, is now looking at diversifying revenues. We're not just working in the workplace anymore. We're looking at individual donors. We're looking at grants, sponsorships, as many resources as possible that can be brought to bear on bringing solutions to our community's most pressing issues. As far as resource investment, the focus is on community change based on needs that have been documented and demonstrated as key. As far as early childhood goes, we know that early childhood programs have a huge impact on the trajectory of children throughout the course of their educational experience, if not graduation rates, and then beyond to college and career readiness. And then we're very interested in measures of success. We don't want to just invest in programs that feel good. We want to invest in programs that actually can be documented as a change-making program. And so basically this is the shift in United Ways, and some are progressing along this shift more than others, more quickly than others, but as far as their interest in the community, we're starting to deepen our interest in the community. If you could have the next slide, please. This is our, UWBG is United Way of the Bluegrass in Central Kentucky. We are 9 counties in Central Kentucky. This is our education agenda, our high-level education agenda, and as you can see, we are considering ourselves to work across the entire spectrum of education, and our focus is community engagement, bringing as many community resources as possible to the table to solve community problems. So, in that end, we want to build a culture of enthusiasm and excitement for quality early learning. I think a goal that many of us share. Increase student and family engagement and student success in elementary learning. Increase student and family engagement and student success in middle school through successful transition to and completion of high school, and increase successful transition to career readiness, which we're actually starting to revise that last bullet to college and career readiness and then lifelong learning. This is an example of some very quick bullets that as an organization we've found very helpful, because you'll find yourself in those situations where you have the opportunity to talk about what your focus is. And if you have an identified focus that's been succinctly bulleted like this, you'll be able to bring it out a little bit quicker when you're talking with somebody. Sometimes you only have a few minutes to express your, what your focus is and what you're trying to accomplish, and so you need to make the best of that time. And if you have this type of bulleted, mission-driven statement ahead of time, you'll be able to talk about it more quickly. If I could have the next slide, please. I wanted to give you a few examples. Basically, United Way, we talk about product development, and those examples I gave you on the last slide are examples of our product, what we consider our product. And when we're looking at fundraising, whether it be with grants or individual donors or companies, we're basically taking a sales approach to it, and we're presenting to them our product. So we're trying to create some concepts around our product development that are easily explainable, and these are a few that we have developed that are pretty specific, but they've become very attractive to funders. They're small-scale projects, and they're very replicatable. So you can have a whole collection of these. But these are the Super Saturdays. These are programs that happen as an extension of either preschool programs or school programs, but on Saturdays. We've been able to have several events now where students come together to do some very hands-on learning. This is a preschool class at one of the Super Saturdays. They tend to focus on science and math, and they're very project-based. So 2 hours on a Saturday. What's great about Super Saturdays also is it gives teachers, we've been able to raise the money to have, to be able to pay teachers to be in the classroom one more day, but it's actually extra income for them. And while the kids are here, and these are volunteers with them, while the kids are here, the parents are in another room working on a parent engagement track that runs simultaneously. And so we sort of kind of couch Super Saturdays as a mini conference concept that not only gets some great exposure, but provides kids with added learning time. So we can move the slide forward. This is our Trailblazers Senior Volunteers Program. This is actually funded through the Corporation for National and Community Service. And this is just a matching program that matches senior volunteers through the RSVP program with preschool programs. And the lady in this picture is actually gold medalist Mickey King from 1972. She's a high diving Olympian from 1972. She's one of our trailblazers, and she goes out into the schools on a regular basis in preschool programs and works with kids. So this is another example of a type of program that we've kind of defined as a product. And then the next picture is, here we go, PNC, oh, if we can go back one, there we go. PNC Countdown to Kindergarten. This is actually a program that we partner with Fayette County Public Schools and the Child Care Council and a number of other partners. These are events that are run through the summer for kids entering kindergarten. PNC Bank has, well, they actually were at the table when it was created. It was actually their idea, and they really wanted to not only put the funding into it, but be a partner in its development. So throughout the course of the summer, there's events held for incoming kindergartners to get, do some activities, get familiar with the teachers, get familiar with the process. It gives a sort of a launch pad for the kindergarten year. And then the next slide is the Toyota Born Learning Academies. Born Learning is a parent engagement program that's been initiated by Toyota and United Way of Kentucky. The first round of grantees, you can see that map there, that was the first round of grantees, but Toyota is actually committed to this program for 3 to 4 years into the future, and they're going to be making seed funding grants coming up in the next several years. And so this is another example, though, where you have a company that's sort of latched onto an idea and said, we want to get behind this and be involved. Move forward. There we go. This is just an overview of the United Way business model. The first bubble there on the left is our impact strategies, develop and implement education, income, and health impact strategies that improve lives. And then if you slide over to the right, and we understand investors' interests, segment and build ongoing relationships with investors. So it's very important for us to know what the investor or the potential investor's interests are. And then framing strategies as investment products, as I showed you in this previous examples, and connecting them to investor interests. So we're basically taking what's needed in the community, identifying potential investors, finding out what they're interested in, and then linking them to some of the products that we already have on the shelf ready to go. On the next slide, and I can email this out to you after the webinar is over, because I think that it's relatively helpful in thinking about strategic planning. And in this case, it's in the context of product development, but it gives you an overview of the steps that you have to take. It allows you to be proactive in resource development and less reactive. For a long time in my career, the only grants we wrote were in response to the RFPs that we discovered, and we had about 2 weeks to turn them around and send them in. I really am happy to be in a place these days where I actually have a lot of material already developed, and I'm actually shopping around for funders. And so it gives you a lot more freedom and flexibility to kind of opportunity to pre-plan. So in this case, to the left there, issue identification. I think many of you have probably gone through this process by identifying what the key issues are in your community, doing the research, engaging the community in dialogue about what they see as what is needed, talking to educators, talking to early childhood programs. Where are the greatest needs and what can be done to help solve those issues. And then the middle development is the strategy development. I think that you all share a common mission of kindergarten readiness and being ready to learn when you enter kindergarten. And this basically would put behind that, are you talking about parent engagement? Are you talking about quality improvement in centers? Are you talking about mini grants for professional development? What are those things that you want to focus on? And then turning those into product definitions, identifying potential products from strategies, choosing strategies to frame as products, giving some description to them so that when you're ready to go talk to them with a potential donor, you'll have that ready in advance. It's really a project development mindset versus a fundraising or a grant writing or that type of mindset. It's really, knowing what you want in advance. The next slide on my presentation really talks about building relationships, and this is so key in everything. I tell my staff, before you ever write one word on a grant proposal, there really should have been a whole lot of relationship development and concept development happening in advance of that. And so wherever you're at, and this is where we say our work is, we never are off the clock. Whether you're at church, whether you're talking with your neighbors and your friends or your family, everybody is a potential partner, and there are lots of interactions you have that you may not even realize where you're talking to folks who might have influence with a company or have a connection with a foundation. And so really taking the time to build the relationship with them. Propriety is the ability and willingness to meet the customer's external expectations and business customs and behavior, understanding the world that they operate in. Competence is their perception of you. Commonality is finding those things that you have in common with them, interests, beliefs, and values. And then intent is an open declaration of your interest in the customer's success and well-being. You're not doing this, if you can get in this mindset, you're not doing it for your own needs, but if you're approaching a funder, you're actually helping the funder achieve their goals. You become the mechanism that helps them achieve their goals. Next, the next slide is a little bit of more information about how we find the commonality with the potential funder, and this is in the case of you're actually interacting with them, either one-on-one, in meetings, on the phone, email. This is where we have to train ourselves as we interact with the potential funder to do more listening than talking. And as United Way people, historically, we just did all the talking. We would show up at employee campaigns and give you the spiel and pass out the pledge cards. Well, so we're retraining ourselves to listen more and to really get a sense of what people are telling us and what we are learning they tell us. And you can also do this through, like if you're looking at a funder like a foundation, there, any online research would also be part of this discovery process. But that's interacting with a potential partner, asking certain types of questions that are designed to help you identify and understand their specific goals and needs. So these are open-ended types of questions that are designed to get them talking. So what types of issues, you say you're at a Chamber of Commerce meeting and it's just an open social and you run into someone who's affiliated with a company that you've wanted to talk to about early childhood, you might start with asking them about what types of issues in the community stay on the top of their minds. What are they thinking about? What most interests them about the early childhood agenda? What is important to you about early childhood counsel's role? What should we know about your short and long-term thinking when it comes to your support in various causes? A lot of companies don't just randomly invest in nonprofits. They actually have a funding strategy that they have pre-developed, and part of your goal is to find out what types of things they're interested in pursuing. We can move to the next. I just wanted to outline that there's 3 levels of product here, and it is possible to sell your product at one of these levels, and the best level is the high-level sell. So if you're early childhood counsel and you're talking with a company and they're interested in investing in you, the first thing you want to do is say, will you invest in children being ready for kindergarten and ready to learn? If you can get an investment at that very high level, that will be the most flexible use of dollars that you have, because they're not interested in being really specific about the money. They're supporting you and your mission. But then there's a mid-level product where you basically talk about what programs will accomplish, and that's teaching specific skills, parent engagement, center-based education, volunteer matching. I used the products that I had highlighted earlier for this mid-level product, and this gives you some flexibility because you're not specifying exactly what you'll be putting the money into, but you're telling them the types of programs you will create that you'll be investing in. And they may say, well, that's all very well and good, but we'd like to talk a little more specifically. What will you do with the money specifically? And then you go to a specific product level at that point in the conversation. Say, well, we have a program called Countdown to Kindergarten, Super Saturdays, Born Learning Academies, etc. You can actually operate in all 3 of these levels. We try to sell high first and then work our way down to more specific based on the potential donor's interest. Shifting over a little bit, a lot of what I've talked about is related to planning in advance. That transitions into grants. Grants, I just wanted to say grants can do a lot of great things, and they can also be a real headache. And so you really want to know in advance what you want to accomplish with grant funding. Through the years, I've heard lots of different perspectives on grants, but grants are not a blank check. I mean, you're really entering into a relationship with the funder, a very specific contract relationship in most cases, and you have to do certain things and report on certain things. So when you enter into that agreement, you then take on a new level of responsibility. You also need to understand, and folks around you need to understand, because sometimes you'll have board members say, well, we should go get grants, and they don't understand, well, we may not be eligible for that grant. You have to really be able to specify eligibility. You may not be qualified to operate a certain grant. If you see, I've seen grant opportunities come out where they're going to fund one program nationwide, and you kind of have a sense that perhaps they're looking for something else, because why would they pick, a little Lexington, Kentucky to fund on this one project when it has a national scope? So you have to really think about your scope and what you're able to do, and examine the grant materials to look and see if it fits you. And then with every grant obligation comes a lot of reporting and tracking, and there's certain levels of fiscal capacity that you have to have in place. And for some organizations, that means a partnership with another organization that has that fiscal capacity, or you have to build it. So the partnerships is a really great way to go if you have limited fiscal capacity. Being a partner on a grant is great because you can share in that income without actually having to be the party that manages all of the reporting and tracking the funds. When you get a rejection, don't personalize it. There's a lot of grant opportunities out there, and I've had several rejections in the last month, and it's hard not to because you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that. But we are just keep moving to the next project. With every grant proposal you write, you're creating a library for you to be able to pull from on future applications. So even when you get a no, you have material that's already developed, and oftentimes you can get reviewer comments back that actually help you resolve some of the issues that may be in your document. So keeping that in mind, that every exercise, whether it's funded or not, is actually helping you toward your end. Be very comprehensive. Rarely grants are long-term. They're more seed funding. Rarely are grants going to pay for what you're already doing. They're more often going to pay for something new and untested, or something that you want to try out as a project, a pilot project. Grants are always, most of the time, project-specific, and then grants typically and frequently get you started, but you got to plan for the long term. So when you're planning a grant, always think about where is this going to go once the grant funding ends. Next slide. So a little bit on the different types of grants, and grants take many shapes and sizes. This is a contract for services. You could actually agree to provide a certain specific service to a bigger project. Same with subcontracting for services. There are grants for specific programs. There's a thing called cooperative agreements, where you're actually signing on as a partner with a major funder. A lot of federal agencies have cooperative agreements, which means you have a lot more close interaction with the funder. They actually are a partner in the project. Clearly corporate program funding, corporate sponsorships, corporate foundations, just a number of different grant type opportunities. Next slide is a little bit about knowing your potential funder, and actually Bradley's going to talk quite a bit on this too in the next section. But doing your research on the potential funder field, knowing the field of interest, knowing their funding history, a lot of Google searching you can do. There's some United Ways, and you can check in with me if you like. I have some databases that I search, see if there's, to look at a funding history of a foundation or a funder, knowing what types of programs they've funded in the past. Knowing if they fund in your area is important. Sometimes they'll say, well, we're only going to fund in Michigan, so you won't want to spend. Knowing the type of support they're going to offer, seed funding, capital, operating expenses, program specific. Some grants will only fund materials. So it just depends. You have to really examine the RFP and any kind of associated websites with that funder to be able to get a feel for where they're. That is all part of this discovery process. You want to know the ranges of funding that they typically provide. Sometimes funders will actually specify, the amount of grant money is available and how much each award would be, and then what the process for the application is. On the next slide, I just wanted to point out that, every grant opportunity is going to be different, and it's going to be based on the request for proposal that they issue or the instructions that you see on the website. But there's some work you can do in advance, and these are kind of the key areas that you'll work in on most applications to a funder. So organizational capacity, characteristics that demonstrate your credibility. This is stuff that rarely changes. If it does change, it changes over the course of a longer period of time. So I have a whole catalog of information that's already been written on United Way of the Bluegrass that when I get to this section in any grant proposal, I can easily incorporate it in and revise it. Your needs and problems, if you have a strategic plan or you've done any kind of local planning, documenting the conversations that you've had, the community dialogue that you've had, the data that you've looked at, this type of information can be cataloged as well and incorporated into a number of opportunities that you may be responding to. The intended objectives and results, these are your goal statements. Basically, how are you going to know when you're successful, and how are you going to measure that and document that? Ability to develop a sensible program plan. I like to think of this component of the grant application as if I was the client, this is the steps from A to Z that I would experience as I walked through your program. So if I can document every step along the way, I've basically written a program plan that shows, what it takes for a client to move through your program. Evaluation of effectiveness not only reflects back to the objectives and results, but also says how you're going to go about analyzing for effectiveness. Sometimes you'll partner with a university, or you're going to just have a committee that reviews the data. You want to be able to specify that. And then the full funding picture, it's great to leverage dollars. So if say you're a recipient of an Early Child Care Council grant, you might be able to use that as a leveraging piece for an additional grant. And so you want to always talk about the project in its full funding scope, not just what you're asking for from that specific funder, but what it costs to run the whole program. And then the reasonable budget, what you plan to use the dollars for, what expenses you plan to spend on the grant. So it's really important to be collecting this kind of information along the way and cataloging it in files electronically so that you can pull from it. Another couple things we do at United Way to bring material forward is we have a regular blog that we post on various issues, community issues, and I find that sometimes information that we put on the blog a month or two ago is perfect for a specific grant application, and I pull from it and include it. We work a lot with student interns, and we actually ask them as part of their internship to write concept papers around some of the projects that we're doing, or do some research and concept papers around some of the community needs that we see. And this gives us additional information that we have on file that we can use in future grant proposals. So with every grant proposal, there's no reason to start scratch every time. Because you all know a lot and you all have material already developed. You may as well be able to find a way to pull from that. And of course we have our product descriptions as well that we pull directly into grant proposals. And then on the next slide, just a few places where you can look for grant resources. I just wanted to say that most libraries and colleges and universities have searchable databases and materials, grant collections to help you identify grant opportunities. Your local United Way can help you do that. Clearly, you can sign up for online newsletters of foundations and organizations to help you identify that. Grants.gov is the federal government's website that allows you to do searches, but they also have a regular newsletter that you can sign up for. Just a number of opportunities that you can find. And I think your local United Way would also be glad to help you identify local resources as well. I'm now going to turn it over to Bradley to take it from here.
All right. Well, thanks, John. I'm going to talk about, Patty, you can forward that a couple of slides if you don't mind. Are you still there? Here we go. All right. So, Patty, can you back up maybe one? Couple. Okay. So I'm going to talk about an approach to both grant writing and fundraising, and these are some things I'm going to talk about: awareness and action, planning, the importance of partnerships, relationships, resources, and reality, open to new ideas and ways of thinking, the alone factor, being creative, and then doing your homework. I hope we, at the end, are not trying to put a square peg in a round hole, which sometimes we get caught up doing that. So, all right, Patty, if you don't mind to move on to awareness, and you can just go ahead and put those down through there, Patty, if you don't mind. So first, from a fundraising perspective, and I'll just back up for a second. One of the things that I have been very intentional about as with our agency is to figure out ways to diversify our funding, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And that just requires thinking differently, thinking outside of the box, being willing to do things that you've not done in the past, or getting rid of things that you've done that haven't worked. So fundraising has become very critical to our agency to have unrestricted dollars to enhance programs that we don't get funded through contracts. So the first question is, who's willing to partner? Sometimes this is the unlikely partner. You never know who's out there that has an interest in families, children, child care, whatever it might be. I'm so sorry, I just lost the slide here. Patty, we just lost the presentation. Give us a second here. All right, looks like it's coming back up.
There we go.
All right, so who's willing to partner? We talked through that. What's your cause? Know your vision and know how to state that well when someone asks you why they should support your agency. When's the best time to fundraise? This is important to know when events are taking place in your community. You don't want to get into a mode of competition with sometimes other larger events that are more established. So you want to know your calendar. Where does the money go? Folks tend to ask this often. You know, if I give, where the dollar is going to go. The YU factor, again, that's kind of telling your story and being able to convince someone that's at a fundraising event or a donor to give to you. And then the last two things are action items, and it's how to make it happen. And what I would tell you is do something. Host an event. Do something to draw folks to your, whether it's your agency, your CECC council meeting, some local event that you've got for families. Do something is critical. All right, Patty. Grant writing, awareness and action. What's available? John talked about this. Google is really our best friend. Our best friend these days. I mean, there are so many resources on Google. I just typed in child care grants yesterday, got 10 million hits. Now, we know that there are not 10 million grants out there available for child care, but there was tons of resources when I typed in just child care grants. Are you eligible? John talked about that as well. Know your criteria. Don't spend your time on something that you're not eligible for. Who are the key partners in the grant proposal? And a lot of times the most effective grants are effective and successful because of the partners that are involved. And then this idea of diversifying funding that I talked about a little bit earlier is thinking differently than what you thought in the past. It's not okay just to continue to receive the same funding that you've received over and over and over and over again. Think business-like. Think about where you can get funding to do other things that grants do not allow you to do. And then the thing that's not on here, actually, I put on my slide is be proactive, not reactive to funding. Be proactive and be ready when grants present themselves. So, all right, Patty, plan. Develop a list of goals and objectives for grant writing and fundraising. What is it that you are trying to accomplish? Sometimes that's really small, sometimes that's really large, but it's important to know what your goals and objectives are. I would also tell you to stay true to your mission there. Whatever your mission is, you want to stay true to that mission when you are asking for funding. What is it that you're asking for that promotes and enhances your mission? Telling your story. I say this all the time to our staff. We always are prepared to tell our story, and that story involves what we do, how it's affecting families, outcomes, results. We're always ready to tell our story to anyone that will listen to us. You must be, your plan must be flexible, and you have to always be willing, Patty, go ahead and click, to go to Plan B if necessary, because sometimes our best laid plans just actually don't work. So you have to be flexible and be willing to move to Plan B sometimes. All right, partnerships. From a fundraising perspective, you can just click all the way through these, Patty. Again, who's willing to partner? Here are just some lists of folks that we partner with. Other not-for-profits, local restaurants love to partner on fundraising. Local TV stations, what I would say, find a TV station that has a mother or a father that has young children, that has an interest in early care and education, and go to them and see how they could work with you. Local school systems, it's not always money that's raised through this, but it is very critical to be connected with your local school systems for nothing else than the connections and the relationships that are made. I would also say that be true for the local faith-based community. Schools and faith-based communities are the two staples in every community across the whole state of Kentucky. If you can partner with those two entities, you are way ahead of the game when it comes to being successful. Fundraising is relational. It really is. It's about developing relationships and telling your story to folks and building and fostering those relationships. And then don't assume anything. Don't assume that just because you were turned down before from a fundraising perspective that you can't go back and do it again. Don't assume that the person that is the most unlikely to give to a charitable cause won't. You never know unless you ask. All right. Partnerships from a grant writing perspective, Patty, you can scoot through those as well. And I'm just going to say one thing here. The word local is in every one of these grant writing partnerships. Local, 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 and when you do that, you somewhat ensure that the duplication of services at best is minimized and sometimes eliminated if you can partner with the right folks and get a real good handle on exactly what's going on. I do think sometimes here when we get local, 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 we sometimes have to put aside our turf issues and become true partners in what we're trying to accomplish. And the reality of it is we're trying to better families and children most of the time through the services that you and I are providing. So, all right, Patty, next slide. Relationships, resources, and reality. Again, who you know that's willing to support your cause. That's the relationship part. Who has the resources in your community? Here are a few. Banks, restaurants, real estate agents, medical, hospital fields. I put real estate up there because we just got asked from a real estate agent about being a part of a program that he's put together where for every house that he's selling, we're going to get a percentage of every sale that he makes, and it's going to go to a very specific cause within our agency. So that's not something I would ever really go to, but because of our visibility in our community, it was a friend of a friend, and they connected us, and we're trying to put together this project. The banks and restaurants, we talked about PNC Bank earlier, John did. We have a couple of projects that we do with them, and there are several banks in each town that are always interested in partnering. People and business support, causes that interest them, and the question here is how do you tug at their heartstrings? What do you say? How do you tell your story in a way that makes folks want to invest in your agency? And they are investing in your agency when they give money to your agency. So how do you tug at their heartstrings? All right, next. Grant writing, same thing, relationships, resources, and reality. Visibility is critical. If you are not visible in your community, you must be. It is critical to, so when folks are talking about early care and education, families, parenting, etc., it is critical that you are visible. Talked about PNC Bank earlier. Because of a relationship we had with them, we didn't even ask them for funding. They came to us with a relatively large grant and said, we know you guys do work with families and children. Can you do this project for us? That's a direct result of being visible in our community. What resources are at your disposal? People. there is value and knowledge in people. So I would encourage you, as your community early childhood councils, you have folks sitting around that table that are very, very resourceful. The other thing I would say to you is innovative does not always mean new. So often we think that when we innovate something that it has to be brand new. It doesn't. Innovation sometimes is best done when you take the resources you have and rethink and retool how you use them or how you don't use them. All right, open to new ideas and ways of thinking. Patty, next slide. Pretty simple. If you do the same thing the same way, you get the same results every single time. I think we sometimes get caught up in this idea that we've done it this way forever and ever and ever. That's from a grant writing and a fundraising perspective. And the reality of it is when you do the same thing over and over, you get the same thing every time. So think differently. Don't let the past determine your future. Certainly you want to learn from the past, not repeat that, but don't let that determine your future. Whether it's a failed fundraising event, whether it's a grant application that you thought was written well and didn't get funded, bounce back up and do that thing again, because who knows, the next time it may be exactly what the funder or the grant writer is looking for. This is a reality, doing more with less. We all know as we work through state government and other contractual things, we're all asked to do more with less. But the other side of that is thinking differently. You have to do that when you're asked to do more with less. And how do you actually do that? You know, one of the things that we've done as an agency is used the web, and we've developed programs that have streamlined processes and made it more efficient and effective for parents, families, providers to receive services. We also use social media as a way to think differently as well, to reach our audience, and we also use blogs and things of that nature as well. So, all right, Patty, next. The alone factor, I would assume probably nobody on the conference call has a grant writing department. We don't. So, you know, you can't write quality grants or fundraise effectively alone. Patty, put those other bullets up, please. Again, here, people are resources. They know what skills they bring to the table from a grant writing perspective, from a fundraising perspective. Do they have relationships with folks in your community? There's knowledge in people. I would encourage you to leverage that. When you try to do both of these alone, or even one for that, burnout is almost an absolute. And this be inclusive, not exclusive. This is the idea of laying aside the turf issues and including everyone that's a relevant partner that brings something relevant to the table, inviting them to be a part of your grant writing process, your fundraising event, etc. So being inclusive is much, much better than being exclusive. All right. Creativity, grant writing. Again, innovation does not mean new. I mentioned that earlier. What resources do you have that you can either retool, that you don't need anymore, that you can tweak? And I like to use this, what needs fixing and what needs nixing, because sometimes a small tweak makes all the difference in the world, and sometimes we just have to get rid of stuff to be effective moving forward. And that goes back to the idea of doing the same thing over and over and over gets you the same result. So it's okay to just nix stuff when it's not working for you. This sometimes means being collaborative. Really, put sometimes, but it's a lot of the times that creativity comes out of a collaborative effort. And then back to the role that technology plays. How can you integrate technology into grant writing, fundraising, et cetera, to reach really you're reaching the masses easier and more effective through technology. From a fundraising perspective, there's one more bullet down there, Patty. Here's what I would encourage you from a fundraising perspective, is be different. don't do the same thing that everyone else is doing. Think about what you can do that no one else is doing, or something that just got started that you can be a part of. And I put two things up here, Tough Mudders. I mean, those things are taking place all over the state of Kentucky, and they're raising literally tens and twenties and thirties and 40 thousands of dollars for good causes. I wish I had been a part of that early on, because they're doing fun stuff and raising good money. Rappelling. Here in Lexington, the Boy Scouts just recently repelled, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 40 people off of the highest building in downtown Lexington as a way to fundraise for the Boy Scouts. And they got local celebrities, local folks that were interested in Boy Scouts that raised $1,000 apiece, and then they got to rappel down this building. I mean, what an ingenious idea from a fundraising perspective. Restaurants love fundraising, and what the critical piece to fundraising is that you pique interest of those folks, of what you're doing, what your vision is, what your mission is, and it comes from telling your story over and over and over. All right, Patty. Homework in terms of grant writing. The do's and don'ts. What's the need? What are the grant guidelines? Research. You have Google and all kinds of other things right at your disposal to have the most up-to-date data and to be able to use that data effectively. Who can write? Who can complete a budget? Who's the best at proofreading? Those are all parts of putting together a really effective grant proposal. Procrastination, this is one of my worst. I do this all the time, so I put don't do it up there. So I'm a hypocrite for saying that. But don't procrastinate. Work ahead and be proactive. Know who your partners are, and then is there a duplication of services anywhere? And if there is, how are you going to partner to enhance those services? Or are you just going to take that out, et cetera? Over here to the right, so often, I mean, I see this often with grant stuff, is the writing process and the grammar and the punctuation and things. Funders look at all those things, because if you can't write the proposal in an effective, correct way, funders would assume you can't deliver the service in that kind of way. So I put, that's a book over there, but write the right way. It's important to grant writing. All right, fundraising homework. Again, a couple of things, just recapping here. Know the local events calendar, what's going on that you're competing with, what's been successful. I would say whatever's been successful, you don't have to do that. Do something different. Be different. Tough Mudders and rappelling, we talked about that. Remember to be relational. This may be the most important part to fundraising, is this next bullet. Follow-up is critical. Folks like to hear from you after they have attended an event, giving money to your organization or your cause, sat with you at a fundraising event where you shared dinner together or whatever. Follow-up is absolutely critical to get that person back to either give you money again, be a part of your fundraising event, tell your story, etc. Make it family friendly. We're talking about families and children here, so make it family friendly in whatever you're planning. Two more bullets, Patty. Be in it for the long haul. Most of the time, fundraising events are not the most successful the first year, so you kind of have to plan a couple, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 year period in to make those successful. One of our fundraising events that we do is a golf tournament. First year, we made no money at it. 10 years later, we're making a substantial amount of money at it because we were in it for the long haul. And then last there is make it fun, whatever the event is. Folks always like fun in fundraising. All right, Patty, 2 more slides here. A couple of little extras here from approach to approaches. And evaluation. You have to know what worked or works well. You have to know what needs tweaking, and you have to know what needs to be eliminated, and that's the nixing factor that we talked about earlier. You have to be able to evaluate effectively in order to keep pressing forward and not just staying in the same mode that you've always been in. And then support systems, there's one more bullet. You guys are the support system in local communities for early care and education, along with many others, including CCR&Rs, regional training centers, child care health consultants, et cetera. So you guys have the capacity to really be influential in your community. And then last, Patty, the final thoughts here from this cute little guy. There are four of these, Patty. Relationships and partnerships are critical to grant writing and fundraising. They're an absolute. You have to think differently. It's not just okay. It's an absolute. Today you have to be able to think differently from a business perspective. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Use the resources. You have to be innovative. And then continual evaluation is key to continual program or product improvement. So that's it.
Well, guys, thank you very much for that incredibly informative hour there of strategies for fundraising and grant writing. I mean, we're going to open it up to questions, but I'd like to make a comment and maybe more of an observation. And as I was sitting here listening to that, I'm thinking about all the diversity we have about in our community early childhood councils across the state, from rural to urban to a good mix. The strategies I think I heard here today, I so appreciate the way you guys framed it up, because I think those strategies work for everybody, whether you're in a smaller community where you were looking at restaurants, or you're looking at churches, or you're in a larger community. So I really appreciate that, and with that, I'm going to open that up to questions that folks have, and if you are muted, you can unmute by pressing *6. Questions or comments, then? Well, okay, let me go ahead and do a couple of housekeeping things here, and you guys be thinking about your questions. Obviously, you can always contact our office if you have any follow-ups. This was being recorded. This webinar was being recorded, and we will send out the PowerPoint presentation to you all as usual. So I am going to remind you that we do not have a series, a webinar in December. Our next webinar will be on January the 8th, 2013, if you can believe it's already 2013. And that one is going to be on data and outcomes, and that's going to be John Roden and Terry Tolan will be doing that webinar. If you don't have any other questions, then, folks, I think we're going to cut you loose. Again, any parting thoughts, guys, as you think about what these councils have to do ahead of them?
Got a lot of work to do, but if you all have any, this is John, if you have any questions, feel free to call me at United Way of the Bluegrass, or Terry's office has our contact information as well, but good luck.
All right, excellent. Once again, guys, thank you very much, and we really appreciate what you've presented here today. And I think with that, we're going to go ahead and conclude the webinar. As always, questions or comments can be sent to our office. We'll send that email